You're listening to episode 53 of A Whole New You podcast. On today's show, we're talking with Kim Mulvaney about simplifying our lives in order to create space and find happiness. We discuss Kim's ebook, Simply Filled, and its beautiful message of finding joy in our ordinary everyday lives. We touch on gratitude, faith, self-care, and comparison traps. Kim's message is one we all need to hear given our hectic modern-day lives. Welcome to A Whole New You podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Maravich. I'm a registered nurse and author of the book 360 Health. I'm joined by my dear friend, Lori Biddle, a health and wellness coach certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Our show exists to inspire and empower women to take charge of their health with weekly tips and conversation about self-care, mindset, nutrition, fitness, and clean living. Please keep in mind that the material provided in this podcast is intended as general information only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're thrilled to have you here. Let's get to the show. Before we get to the show, I'd like to read a 5-star review that we received through iTunes. This is from Wise Body Wellness 2, and it's titled Authentic and Informational. Love the podcast. Kim has such a beautiful way of connecting authentically with her guests. Her episodes are full of love and useful content. Thank you so much for leaving this review. I would definitely say that this applies to Lori in her interviews as well. Reviews and subscribers help boost our rankings in iTunes, and they help people find our show who might not know about it already. So if you are listening right now, why don't you pause the show and head over to iTunes? You can subscribe there and also leave us a rating and review. If you do, we'll be sure to read your review on a future episode. Now let's get to the show. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I am pleased to have Kim Mulvaney joining us. Kim is a writer who provides women with tangible advice to start pursuing a life of contentment and fulfillment. For nearly 10 years, she has worked in healthcare, in mental health as a recreational therapist, and in physical rehabilitation currently as a physical therapist assistant. She has learned how integrated these two aspects of health truly are. This, along with her faith, has inspired her to write in order to help women see that they have more control over the fulfillment and peace they experience in their lives than they think. Finding joy in the simple things is key to this. Though it can be tough work, being healthy and happy isn't nearly as complicated as we make it. Kim wants to show women how to break through the mental blocks that keep us from living a life of abundance. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's the Kim night.
It is a Kim show. I love it.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I guess because I follow you on Instagram and I've seen your picture and stuff. I don't think of you as like having the same name, but sometimes when I meet someone named Kim, I like can't get over it, and I have a hard time like saying their name in conversation because it's like weird.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I'll have patients come into the clinic who are named Kim. I'm like, Kim, my name's Kim. I'll be working with you today. And yeah, it is weird. So I totally get it.
I know. My husband's name is Jim. And so people are always like, oh, Jim and Kim. And it's like, it rhymes. And like, we can't forget you.
Oh my gosh, that is funny.
Yeah. Right. Well, Kim, I have been very excited to have you on because, like I said, I've been following you on Instagram, and I read your beautiful ebook that we're going to be talking about in part tonight. But before we get to talking about your ebook, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Central Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, just south of Champaign-Urbana, actually out in the country. So it's the best of both worlds because I'm really close to work and to all the modern conveniences of a gas station, a grocery store, shopping, all that. But we're out in the country where it's nice and quiet and we've got plenty of space. So we love that. I'm married to my husband, Derek, and we have our fur baby who's a chocolate lab. His name's Brian. So if anyone follows me on social media, they'll see a lot of pictures and videos of Brian because he's just so adorable. And who doesn't love an adorable dog? So he's a lot more fun to watch than me most of the time. So I love to post about him. But like you said, I currently work in physical therapy as a physical therapist assistant at an outpatient clinic here in Champaign-Urbana. we mostly focus on orthopedic issues, but um, between the 15 to 20 people that I work with, we have all different types of specialties that we focus on. I know you just had a women's health PT on, and I listened to the episode, loved
Yes.
it. That was awesome. We also have a women's health PT at our clinic, which is great.
Mhm.
We have some therapists that specialize in dizziness and balance, geriatrics, sports and running related issues, just a wide variety of things. So that's what we do at the clinic. Um, and I wanted to give a little bit of background on kind of where I started in my working career and kind of how I got to the point where I am now with physical therapy and my writing.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I started off as a recreational therapist. That's what I did my bachelor's degree in, my undergraduate in, and the thing that I loved about that type of work and how it really ties into what I do with my writing is it was very holistic. It focused on mental, social, emotional, and physical wellness and how that all tied together. So, my first job was at a children's home with adolescents who were going through abuse and neglect and recovering from those kinds of issues, which was very, very hard work.
Mm.
Especially, I was 22 when I started there, and some of the kids were 18 to 21 years old. So I thought,
Oh,
"Oh my
wow.
gosh, they're almost my peers," and here I am
Yeah.
trying to be this positive adult role model to them. So, that combined with just the severity of the things they were dealing with was very tough work. And then not too long after, I got a job, excuse me, locally. And I thought when I got that job, like, this is it. This is my dream job. This is where I'm going to be for the next 30 to 40 years. I'm going to love this work. It's better pay than I will get anywhere else as a rec therapist. It's steady work, awesome benefits, retirement, all that stuff. Like, I thought I had made it. And so, and when I started there, I was so excited because I love old people. And I
Mhm.
hope that doesn't sound demeaning or
No.
disrespectful at all, but I love
Mm.
old people, and I have since college when I did some volunteer work. And I don't know what it is about that. I could probably go on and on about that, but I really enjoyed the type of work I did there, especially on the Alzheimer's unit. What kind of propelled my writing, I would say, and my move to physical therapy was there was a lot of people that worked at this facility who had worked there for decades of their life and were so unhappy and
Mm.
so unmotivated in their work. And it was clear. It was not only clear with my interactions with them, but it was clear with their interactions with patients. And that broke my
Mm.
heart because I would see patients not being treated very well at times. Just not in like a physical abuse or anything like that. Nothing that
Yeah.
severe, but just maybe being um maybe people not being so kind to the patients or not as helpful as I felt they should be. And
Mhm.
um and I thought to myself, I'm not going to be that way. I'm going to have a good attitude and I'm just going to keep my head down and focus on my work. And I tried so hard and it helped a lot of the time, but it just got to the point where I knew if I stay here, I think I'm going to end up like some of these people who are just working here for the pay and for the retirement. And I'm not going to spend my life in a job 5 days a week for decades where I'm unhappy just so I can have a good retirement when it's all said and
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Because, God forbid, you don't know what's going to happen. You might not live to see that retirement. And it's not worth it for ourselves. And it certainly was not fair to the people we're caring for in the medical profession when you show up and you're unhappy and our patients can see that, that's so unfair to them. So I did a lot of soul searching and decided that physical therapy was always something I was interested in during my undergraduate degree. So, but I wasn't for certain at the time that's what I wanted to pursue. And it's a huge commitment to go to PT school, the cost, the time, everything. So I thought, I'm going to wait and do rec therapy for a while. And if I decide to come back to it, I can. And I did some job shadowing. I spoke with the PTs and the OTs I worked with at my workplace, and those people seemed really, really happy. They loved their jobs and they had been doing it for decades and they still love their jobs. I thought, okay, that's very telling to me. So that's when I decided to go back to school. And long story short, it would have taken me forever and so much debt to go back to PT school. I would have had to retaken some of my gen eds. So that's why I went the PTA route and I did things a little bit backwards and went and got an associate's degree to be an assistant. And so I've been at my current workplace for 4 years now, and I really enjoy it. I feel like I'm in a place where I really like my job. I love my coworkers. I work with some of the best people. And the hours are good, pay's good. I've got a really great work-life balance. And so I've been kind of moved to share my journey through that with my writing, to encourage people that not only can we find happiness in the simple things in life, but we also don't have to be stuck where we are. We don't have to just think, I've been in this place too long, so I'm just kind of stuck here. We always have a choice. We can always take control of our lives and make a change for the better. Because I don't want to see people spending decades of their life unhappy. And so by kind of simplifying my life back then and really doing a lot of introspection and figuring out what it was I wanted out of life, what I felt God calling me to do, that's how I came to the conclusion to go back to school for PT, and has kind of led me to where I am now. And it's also what led me to start writing, which is something I've wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. So I know that was like really long and drawn out there, but that's kind of the history of my working career and how I came to where I am now and how it's led me to my writing.
Well, I think we needed that. So I'm glad that you've painted that picture for us. And I can relate on so many levels, Kim. The parallels are amazing because I had worked as a registered nurse in a hospital and I felt exactly the same as you felt. There were so many colleagues that were burnt out and, working long shifts, working the night shift. That's what I worked for the years that I was in cardiac care. And, there was just a lot of turnover on the unit I worked on, but also the people that had been there a long time were not happy. So I decided also that I needed a career change. And that's why I explored teaching, which is like completely different. But like you, I went back to school and got the degree to become a teacher because I wanted something more positive in my life. There were a lot of nurses who enjoyed what they were doing, but I just wasn't one of them. And I didn't want to turn into someone who was just grumpy and was living for the paycheck, like you said too. And I think one other thing that you said, it's a hard thing for people to hear, but it is a truth. And I think we need to highlight it, is that we always have a choice. Because I think, so many people stay stuck in jobs that go to nowhere. Like, oh, why I have a family to support, or, I have to pay the bills and I don't have time to interview and things like that. And I do have sympathy for that, but we have to weigh the options, and do you want to live and work in a job that pays the bills, but you are so miserable? And, you hear of so many people, unfortunately, they like retire and then they pass away,
Yes,
shortly
exactly.
after,
Absolutely.
and it's like
Yes.
you worked for this and you earn your retirement, but now your health is not there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it's a hard thing to hear, but I mean, I think, my husband had lost his job like last January and we were smacked in the face by that. And it did mean, unemployment for a little while and then relocating when he got a new job. And it turned our world upside down. And I never thought that I would see the sun again. I just never thought I would turn right side up again. But you do, and you can work through things. And it is important to just like to try to find that joy. So that's what I'm excited to talk with you about today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you have written a beautiful ebook and it's titled Simply Filled. So I'd like for you to tell us the backstory of how and why you decided to write the book, if you
Sure.
don't
Well,
mind.
yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. That's such a sweet compliment. And I appreciate that you took the time to read it and go over
Oh,
it
yeah.
again to prepare for the podcast. And and you've given me some really sweet compliments and encouragement, and that makes me feel really good because it means a lot to hear that positive feedback. So thank
Well,
you.
of course. And I would just want to tell our listeners, you can get the ebook through your website, right? And
Yeah.
I know we can touch on that later,
Yeah.
but and
Mhm.
it's not a really long read. I mean, you could read it in like an evening or,
Mhm.
2 evenings, but it's simple and profound. So that's why I
Oh,
love it.
good,
Yeah.
good. Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
going for, so I'm glad that that's how you took it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of the backstory, I kinda already talked about with my journey through the different careers that I've had and now I'm pursuing
Yeah.
writing, and some of that's
Mhm.
in the ebook as well. Um, but what really drove me to pursue writing in particular was like I said, it was something that I'd wanted to do since I was a kid. I can remember being little, like in third grade, and writing little children's books and showing my
Mhm.
mom and showing my teachers, and always enjoying that and pursuing it in different ways as I got older. And then I actually went to college initially as an English major because I thought, I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know how to pursue it. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, I'll just go in as an English major. It's pretty broad. And my first semester freshman year, I took a British literature course and I hated it. It was horrible. It's one of the least favorite classes I ever took in college. And I struggled so much in it. And I remember the professor saying, if you don't like this course and if you don't do well in it, don't be an English major
Oh
because this is what they're
my.
all like. She was not very encouraging, to say the least. So I said, okay, hint taken. I'm not doing this. And really, it was a blessing because that's when I decided to pursue healthcare. And I don't think I would have the perspective for my writing that I do if I hadn't worked in healthcare like I have, if I hadn't worked with kids who have been abused and neglected on Alzheimer's unit. I worked on palliative care, which was pretty much hospice, working with people in end of life situations, and now working in physical therapy. I don't think I'd have the perspective and the inspiration to write about the things that I do if I didn't have those past jobs. So for anyone out there who's feeling like I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now, even if it doesn't feel like it's what you were meant to do. I truly believe that God places us in certain places in our lives at certain times for a reason. And I know that sounds really cliche, and we've all probably heard that a lot of different times, but I truly believe in that because I've seen it in my own life. So I finally decided once I did PTA school and I started that work, I decided writing something I've always wanted to do. I took a bold step, quitting a good job and going back to school and doing this. Well, I'm on a roll. Why don't I just throw another wrench in there and pursue something else that seems totally unrelated, but it's something I've always wanted to do. And I never wanted to look back and think, what if I would have tried writing? What if, that was a dream I've always had and I never did it? Why didn't I just try, even if nothing ever came of it? So I think just fear of that regret kind of pushed me to pursue it. Um, and I started off writing. I'll kind of joke with some people who I know locally, and in the entrepreneur world in my local community, that I kind of blogged in private for a long time because I was terrified. I was so afraid that people would think it was stupid or that I sucked at writing and it was awful, or oh my gosh, can't believe she's writing about this stuff that's kind of weird, or I look at her differently now. I've always been a people pleaser and a peacekeeper. So I was
Mhm.
really afraid to step into that and let people see this different side of me because my writing is me. It's very personal to me. So I was very fearful of that. But honestly, I just think the drive to not have any regrets about not doing it is what really propelled me to write. And again, I just saw so many connections between mental health and physical health and social and emotional and spiritual, all of them all tie together so much. And I wanted to try to um, communicate to people how those tie together and encourage them that no matter where they're at, what situation they're in, they have control. As we said earlier, Kim, we always have a choice, and that ultimately God's in control, but we always have a choice. And if we create some space in our lives to better hear Him guiding us, then he's going to guide us down the right path and make our path straight and lead us in the right way, even if we don't know where it's going or what's going to come of it. If we create that space in our lives so that we can hear him speaking to us and we can go to him, then we're going to have so much clarity, and it's always going to lead to joy and more peace. So that's really where the term simply filled comes from, simplifying our lives to create space for that to happen and to be more fulfilled through that.
Oh, I love that. I love that the notion of creating space for God. Because I think in this day and age, we're so busy. You see
Mhm.
somebody, haven't talked to somebody for a while. How you doing? Oh, good. Just so busy.
Yes,
Like
yes, that's the
that's the
default
go-to.
response.
It is. And like everybody's busy, and everybody's
Mhm.
busy in their own way. But um, it's a self-made problem,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. And we do have the ability to step back. We can turn off the phone, turn off social media. We
Mhm.
can just back away and choose to create that space, because in doing so, that's when we can hear, like you said, the calling for our lives.
Mhm.
Um, and I do like that you mentioned that connection between the mental health and physical health. I think, a lot of times these days I'm hearing kind of like the flip side of it, that your physical health can play a role in your mental health, and which is
Mhm.
very true. If we have
Mhm.
gut issues or um, disease states, that can affect our brain health and can lead to things
Mhm.
like Alzheimer's. But I I think it's important to point out that when our mental health is not at its peak, that our bodies can actually start to deteriorate too.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
and I
absolutely.
yeah, and I love that connection you've made, and you do talk about that in your book to an extent. But getting back to the book, I do want to discuss some specific aspects of your book, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
because each one is really so important. And the first one is gratitude, and you say that gratitude is something you discuss it in detail, being specifically grateful for the way our lives look right now. So,
Mhm.
in your opinion, why is that so important? What are some ways that we can practice gratitude for what we have right now in our lives?
Yeah, I think that it kind of seems like right now in our culture, especially in the online space, we hear a lot of stories about people who are successful entrepreneurs, and they talk about how, they hustled and they had anxiety and they worked 80 hours a week and they had all this stuff going on and they were so stressed out. And then they finally, like, quote unquote, made it and had this successful online business, or maybe not even an online business, but they felt like they made it in whatever it was they were doing, but they had to struggle and hustle to get there, and
Mm,
they went through a lot of hard times to try to get where they wanted to go. And I think that that is, even though I love when people share those stories because we can learn a lot from it, I wanna hear more stories about people who are pursuing things in their life, um, without having to go through all that struggle and all that anxiety or maybe depression. And yes, of course, there's gonna be struggle when you're trying to pursue anything, whether it be a career, relationship, or whatever it is. There's gonna be ups and downs, but I think that we think that our happiness is going to be in the next thing rather than
mm,
trying to be happy right where we're at. And that's part of, I mentioned to you before, this notion of falling in love with the process. And that's something that I kind of I thought about a lot. I took a break from writing, as you know, kind of over the summer, for a few months there. And I just decided, because it got to a place where the process of writing and doing my blog was just stressful and I kind of dreaded it and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I thought, I have a day job. I'm making money. I can pay my bills, so I
mhm,
don't have to do this. So if it's bringing me this much um, stress, then why am I doing it? And then when I stepped back, I could see that I was doing it to try to get to the next step, to try to, like,
mhm,
make more money as a writer rather than writing because I enjoy it. And if it's something that I'm supposed to make money from, then I believe that God's going to guide my steps and send me in that direction. And if it's not, then I've got to be in love with the writing and the process of encouraging women through my writing. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. So specifically, that's kind of how it has played out specifically for me. But for other people, I think it plays out in that as well. We're always thinking, I'll be happier when I get married, or when I have kids, or when I get that new job, or when I get my dream home, or when we finally move, or whatever it is. We're always looking for happiness in the next thing. And we're never going to be happy when we're always looking to the next thing. Because once we get whatever that is, we're just going to go on looking to the next thing, because we never learned how to be happy right where we are. And I think the biggest part of that is having gratitude for what we've got right now. And there's always something we can be grateful for. And a few years ago, I read Ann Voskamp's book, 1000 Gifts. Have you heard of that, Kim?
I have, yes.
Yeah, I read that. And that was really like the first book of its type that I had ever read. Like before Rachel Hollis, or before I got introduced to Jenny Allen, or any of these other like awesome female writers that talk about abundant living and joy and faith. That was the first book I read, and it was, to me, very profound. And she talked about how she made a list of 1,000 gifts in her life, 1,000 things she was grateful for. So I did that. I had this tiny little flip journal thing that I had gotten from somewhere, and every day I would just write down a few things. And some days it was, I'm grateful that I'm not ripping my hair out right now because I had such a bad day at work, or something like that, like anything that I could think of, I would just write it down. And it just helped me to refocus my mind on being grateful for what I've got right now. And it helped me to really enjoy my life where I'm at right now, because I knew that, even though I left one career for another, I knew that if I didn't learn to be happy right where I wasn't going to be happy in that next career either. So it's not that the career change itself necessarily made me happy. It's kind of the internal work I did during that career change that is what got me to the place that I am now, where I just feel a lot more content and at ease and optimistic about my life and where it's going.
It's really evident, Kim, that you've done a lot of internal work, and I just thank you for sharing that, because I think we can hear these things, but especially in your book, it comes across loud and clear, and you give so many great examples of how you've done that internal work. Now we'd like to take a minute to give a shout out to our show partners, Perfect Supplements and Amazon. Perfect Supplements is a family-owned and operated business that supports local farms. Their superfoods and supplements are non-GMO, third-party tested for purity, and contain no synthetic ingredients, colors, or flavors. They're also organic or wild harvested and fairly traded. Products range from collagen and bone broth powders to plant proteins, greens, desiccated liver, and adaptogenic herbs. Perfect also carries vitamins and supplements from other reputable sources like Just Thrive, Dr. Mercola, Gaia Herbs, Green Pastures, Garden of Life, and Prescript Assist. To check out their wide array of products, go to perfectsupplements.com/Kim. If you use coupon code KIM10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. This is a great way to get superfood nutrition while helping to support our podcast. And just as a disclaimer, it's not the intention of our podcast to provide specific medical advice, but rather to provide you with information to better understand the role of dietary supplements in health. We urge you to consult with a qualified health provider to discuss both the advantages and risks of using dietary supplements. Our other show partner, Amazon, is the largest online warehouse and carries just about everything you need. If you shop on Amazon, which is likely, you can support our show at the same time at no additional cost to you. Simply use our affiliate link to enter the site, then browse and buy, just as you normally would. A Whole New You podcast will make a small commission from your purchase, which helps to support production costs for the show. You can find a clickable Amazon link in the show notes for this episode. You can also go to the products page of our website, awholenewyouPodcast.com, to find the link. If you love our show and appreciate the free information you get each week, please consider buying from Perfect or using our affiliate link when making purchases on Amazon. Now let's get back to the show. A couple of things you said I also can't stand the word hustle. I hate it. It drives
Yes.
me crazy because
Uh-huh.
I feel like, why are we putting so much pressure? Like, it's like hustle till you die, or, you can sleep when you're dead, or,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
just can't stand that, because what is the point? Because, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have been listening to some on the law of attraction. Now, I am very much a Christian, and, believe in God's calling on our lives. But I also believe that, like, our interactions with the world, that we draw to us what we put out there, that our kind of like our attitudes and our vibrations
Mhm.
kind
Mhm.
of bring back to us what we put out there. So when we're
Mhm.
positive, we attract more positive things. And if we're
Mhm.
negative, and I think you would agree with that,
Yes,
we're attracting more
absolutely.
negative into our lives. Um,
Mhm.
but I was listening to a podcast recently, and the woman was pointing out that, like, our goal in life is joy. Like, our daily goal should be to seek joy in anything
Mhm.
and everything that we do. It shouldn't be to make more money. If you make more money as a byproduct, then that's great.
Sure, yeah.
But, and who doesn't want that? But your
Yeah.
goal should be to find joy, to be happy with what you're doing,
Mhm.
to seek that fulfillment, in your daily lives and everything that you're doing, whether it's work or play or your hobbies. It should be to find joy, because when we're joyful, then we can exude that to other people too. So it's really
Mhm.
important that having that gratitude is just so important, because it affects our relationships with other people too. And it
Yes.
absolutely affects our mental health too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like how you pointed that out, how it exudes onto others, because
Yeah.
I certainly don't wanna sit here and say, "Oh, you just need to anything that makes you happy," because, I mean, if anything, if I was gonna live my life that way, I'd probably quit my job and sit at home with my dog every day and watch Hallmark Channel, you know?
Yeah. Right,
So,
right, right. Yeah.
it's not about,
Right.
just doing only the things that make us
Right.
happy, but like you said, things that are gonna bring us joy, and a lot of time that is pouring into others or lifting each other's up,
Mm.
or excuse me, lifting others up. So any way that we can do that in a way that brings us joy, like, boom, that's it. That's
Right.
our purpose there, pouring into others in ways that make us happy. That's it.
It's a very good point. Very good point. Um, Another big area of your book is about self care, and so I want to talk about that too. You give some simple but profound ways to incorporate self care, especially, you mentioned, in areas like nutrition and exercise and making time for hobbies. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I mean, I'll kind of give a few practical examples for people on how they can incorporate proper nutrition and exercise um, into their daily life, even when, like we've been saying, we're busy. We hear that all the time. And I was just talking to somebody else about this as well, how everybody's busy. We are all busy. So to me, that's not a good excuse. Everybody's busy. We've all got stuff going on. But um, eating well doesn't have to be complicated. I am no picture perfect example of someone who eats really healthy. I mean, I love sweets, I drink beer, I drink wine, I enjoy all that stuff. But I think if you just think if I mean, if you don't eat any fruits and vegetables, just tell yourself, I'm going to eat one fruit today. I'm going to eat one apple. And if that's where you're at and that's where you got to start, then start there. That's fine. Or if you're not eating any vegetables, then pick one vegetable you're going to eat that day. Or if you usually eat like 3 servings of sweets, then say, I'm going to cut it down to 2 or maybe
Mhm.
one. I think we get caught up in kind of these diet fads and this all or nothing mentality of, I'm going to do this diet and I'm going to do it perfectly. And then the minute we slip up a little bit, we totally fall off the bandwagon and we just pig out and we don't exercise and we're just like, heck with it, I'll start over tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and we do it again. And then pretty soon we're like, well, I'll do it next week. And then that turns into next month and then next year. And it's just, we go down this rabbit hole because we think if I can't do something perfectly, then I'm not going to do it at all. But we've just got to start with these small steps. And it's the same thing with exercise. If you are completely sedentary, then make it a goal to get up once an hour out of your chair and walk. Go to the bathroom and then go sit back down. or get up and go get a drink and then sit back down. Again, if that's where you're at, then you just start where you're at and start small. You don't have to go. And I tell this to my patients all the time in the clinic. I think people are really afraid of physical therapy because I've had people tell me, well, I thought I was going to come in here and you were going to make me like do a bunch of push-ups or something. And I'm like, no, especially not after you just had a rotator cuff repair, sir. That's not what I'm gonna have you do, no. So, I think there's a big misconception that we're like these drill sergeants that are gonna make you do
Mhm.
these super hard, like, CrossFit exercises, and it's
Mhm.
not that at all. And that's one thing I love about physical therapy is we're really trying to teach people really simple ways to strengthen their bodies that's going to help with their pain management and help them function normally on a daily basis. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Simple exercise, go for a walk, sit in your chair and do some leg kicks, whatever it is. And try to find something that you don't hate. That's key. Because if you go run and you hate it, you're not going to be very motivated to stick with it. So find something that you enjoy doing or that you don't hate doing, whether it's yoga or cycling or anything. Find something that you like and you're much more likely to stick with it. And then in the case of making time for hobbies, I think that is really important because we can get so overwhelmed with our day-to-day activities with our jobs, taking care of our families, just the normal to-dos that we have to do every day. And even if you take 5 to 10 minutes a day to do something you enjoy, and I'll throw people a bone, even if it's watching a TV show. It could be something super passive like that. If it's something that's going to bring you joy and give you some rest, make time to do it. If for me, a lot, it's prayer and journaling and doing a Bible study. And if I can only make like 5 minutes to do that before I run out the door in the morning, then that 5 minutes is going to set the tone for the rest of my day. And it makes my day so much better. Um, and I just think self-care I feel like there's a big debate as to whether or not is self-care good or is it selfish, especially in the Christian world a little bit, I would say, because they say, well, we're called to die to ourselves and pick up our cross and follow Jesus. And I get that, but I I truly don't believe that means going through life in misery and just pouring ourselves out to others so much and never filling up our own cups. From a biblical perspective, even Jesus had to go be by himself and just
Mhm.
pray and be alone sometimes. He wasn't around people 24/7 helping them and performing miracles. He had to go away at times too and be alone. So it's not selfish for us to do that. There's a story that I tell in my ebook, and it's, I don't know, it might be a true story from somewhere. I think I actually read it like on the internet somewhere. I can't remember, but about a woman who was really busy. She was asked to go deliver some food to an elderly man who was a shut in, and she didn't want to, but she did it because she felt like she had to. And then when she delivered the food, it was evident on her face and in her attitude that it was an annoyance and a bother to her. And do you think that man was happy that she delivered that food? No, it made him feel bad. It made him feel like a burden. And it's kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, Kim, in healthcare. When as healthcare providers, if we have a poor attitude and we bring that to our patients, we're not really helping them. We're just going to make them feel bad, going to discourage them. So we've got to take care of ourselves and make sure that we have proper nutrition, proper health, because those are just basic needs. We've got to be healthy. We've got to be able to function. And then taking care of our spiritual and emotional selves, whatever that means, doing things we enjoy, because when we're more joyful, like you said, that's going to pour into everybody else and all the people that we're serving. The old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, is so
Mhm.
true, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you talked about the illustration of the grumpy woman who was trying to, uh, bring food to a shut-in. Because I think we can all relate to that, and I think that illustrates really clearly um, when we're not in a good headspace and we're just like giving from an empty well, that
Mhm.
it's not truly giving. And I know, just from firsthand experience with my kids, when I am like wiped out, when I'm tired, when I've been giving and giving and giving all day, I can get short fused with them, come evening time. And it honestly comes from a place of not caring for myself enough.
Mhm.
And so I think that, a lot of moms can understand that. And just we in general, think about like your work day, and you're probably exhausted by the end of the day. And then you need some
Mhm.
time for those hobbies that you were talking about, and just to kind of regroup, or spend time with your husband,
Mhm.
because when we don't do something to fill up our own cup, we're not really serving others. So I
Mhm.
think I think that's a good point that you're talking about, that I don't think that being martyrs to every cause really is the most Christian thing to do,
Mhm.
because we can't really help others
Mhm.
effectively if we're not helping ourselves first.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I've heard this, I don't remember again where I heard this either, but I've heard it worded in the way of when we kind of take this martyr mindset, that we're actually kind of putting ourselves on a pedestal, like, I've got to do all the things and everyone's
Mhm.
relying on me. It's like, there's billions of other people in the world. Like, people are gonna be fine if I take a break. Like, the world's not gonna fall apart if I take a break. I'm not that important, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
So we're kind of lifting ourselves up to this
Mhm.
unrealistic level when we take that mindset as well.
Right, exactly. It's like the people that, um, get caught up in the hustle, and
Mhm.
they love the hustle until then they're completely drained.
Yes,
You have nothing.
yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So in your book, you also then have a section titled "Root for Your Sisters," which I really love.
Mhm.
Why did you want to include that in your book, and why is it important for us, especially women, to move away from comparison traps?
Well, I wanted to include it because I think of all the different aspects of health and wellness, and I think social health and wellness is super important because I think we're called to live in community with each other and to lift each other up, and we all bring different gifts um, to the world that are going to help each other in different ways. And it's just so evident. I mean, I'm sure anyone listening's like, I've heard this a million times before, but it is so evident that we get in these comparison traps with social media nowadays. When you get on
Mhm.
social media and you see what she's doing or what she has, or the things she's working on, or her feed or whatever, and it's so pretty, and I should be doing more of this, I should be on here more, I should be commenting more, all this stuff. And it's it just brings us down, and it brings on so much anxiety. And um I think and I don't have the perfect answer for it, but we've got to start to move away from that because it's so toxic and it's so debilitating for people.
Mhm.
um and I think especially as women, and I hate to say it, but we're not very good at rooting for each other. We have this
Mhm.
really weird mentality that if she's happy and she's doing good, then I can't myself, like, if like there's not enough to go around, and if she's doing well, then I can't do well. And I don't really know where that stems from or where it comes from, but I think we've got to be intentional about getting away from that. And something that I have found helps, I think it might be one of the action steps I put in the ebook, is when you're starting to feel that way, if there's a specific person that you are feeling envy towards, then instead of sitting there and telling yourself this narrative of, well, if I had more money, I could have that too, or if I had more time, I'd be able to do that too, or whatever. Just take a deep breath and reach out to that woman and just lift her up in some way. Like, if it's on social media, comment on something that she posted that was really uplifting, or maybe she put a pretty picture of herself up. Just say, "Oh my gosh, you look so pretty." And that very, very simple act will have like these crazy huge benefits. I mean, she's probably going to comment back, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It means so much that you commented on that." And then it might spark some kind of relationship even between this person that was annoying you at the time, and you might get to know that person a little bit better and become friends, or you never know. But I think we again, I don't know where it comes from, but we've got to stop thinking if she's got a good life going, I can't, that's somehow taking away from my happiness, because it's so false. And I think we talk in our culture about, how, and not to get too political or anything, but the patriarchy and things like that. And I think back to times in my life where I've been bashed or talked down to or discouraged, and it was not by another man, it was by another woman that, made
Mhm.
me feel bad. So I think we've got to start taking these intentional steps to build each other up.
I think that's so important. It adds to the whole aspect of mental health. And I
Mhm.
think it's so very timely. And I've said this before on the podcast, I have such a love-hate relationship with social media.
Mhm.
I have met wonderful people like you on social media,
Mhm.
and I have formed friendships with, people I would truly call my friends. But there is the whole comparison thing, and a lot of it is in our own minds.
Mhm.
The whole "I should" thing. I get down on myself, like, more than you could ever imagine, like, I just, how do I get more followers, or how do I
Mhm.
get people to the podcast? And it's, I'm not doing myself a favor by doing that. I'm neglecting, the gifts that I really do have. I'm not lifting myself up enough in that way
Mhm.
when I'm
Mhm.
comparing myself to other people. And I love that you said, rather than, saying, well, if I had, if I had a hired staff doing my social media, then, I could be better. If I had a photographer, I would look
Mhm.
better, or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but I do love that you mentioned that. It's just like reaching out and lifting someone else up, because for one, we never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of pretty pictures on Instagram and social media, happy looking families, beautiful women, in shape people, whatever.
Mhm.
But you never know. I mean, someone can look beautiful on the outside and be really hurting on the inside,
Mhm.
or, mentally not in a good headspace. And
Mhm.
by lifting up someone else, like you said, you can form these connections, but you're just also showing, like that whole if you're grateful for your life, you don't have to worry about other people and worry about what
Mhm.
they're doing. And I think that that just helps to pass that message of just like, here I am coming from a place of positivity, and I'm passing that to you, because it does have a chain of event kind of reaction, that
Yeah.
maybe that person will then comment on someone else, and just
Mhm.
passing that along. I think that it's just so important, because social media isn't going away. And so
Mhm.
we have to learn to live with it, but do it in a positive way that's not neglecting our own mental and emotional health, but is really
Yes.
trying to help other people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like and you said it, it's not going anywhere. So we've got to figure
Yeah.
out a way to deal with it and either harness it for good or just step away from it if that's what it takes. So
Right.
you're absolutely right.
Right. And I'm all about taking breaks from social media too, like you
Mhm.
did, and I
Mhm.
did earlier this fall. It was very good for me. So,
Yes.
there's, your life will go on,
Mhm.
and everything will be just fine if you have to take a step away. So,
Yes, exactly. Well, we're glad to have you back, Kim, because it's
yeah,
so
well,
fun seeing you and your cute boys and everything. So we're glad to have you back.
well, thank you, Kim. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
One last thing I wanted to touch on, before we go is, you've mentioned this so many times in our conversation, but it's very evident in your book too. And that's the underlying theme of your faith. Um, how does your faith factor into the way that you live today and the practices that you've mentioned?
Oh, that's kind of a loaded question, so I will
It
do my
is.
best to answer it without droning on for too long here. One thing that I want to put out there is that growing up, I grew up with uh, parents that sent me to church every Sunday, um, and so I just from a young age I was always around God and Jesus and the church, and but I never felt like it was shoved down my throat, which might sound weird because I just said I went to church every Sunday, but my parents never raised us in a way that made me feel guilty for my shortcomings or my sins or anything like that. They just kind of the way that they raised us and that they behaved and the ways that they taught us to behave. Um, were reflective of God and Jesus and how he calls us to live our lives. So for instance, my parents, the one thing they did kind of like shove in our faces and in a good way was to always live by the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. And that, I mean, that was like told to me so many times. I remember anytime I'd go to my mom or my dad with a problem at school, someone being mean or having an issue or whatever, is treat others the way you want to be treated. Just, that's the way God wants you to live. So when I got older and went out into the world, and went out into college, especially coming from a tiny, tiny high school, I had 33 kids in my graduating class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's itty bitty. So coming from a school like that where everyone knew everyone and everyone in my class was kind of like a sibling because we had known each other forever. I never really had to make friends until I got to college. So I didn't really know how to make friends until I went to college. I kind of had to figure it out. And the people that were in my school, we all just kind of accepted each other for the way we were because we just had known each other so long. It's like, that's just how they are. And it was actually a really beautiful thing growing up. But anyway, when I got older, and especially when you start getting into politics and different cultural issues and social issues and all this stuff and what's right and what's wrong, I was kind of surprised or taken aback, like, why are we having all these debates about what's right and wrong? And like, you're just supposed to love each other and treat each other the way you want to be treated. I don't understand, like, why are we getting worked up about all these different things and these tiny little details? And I'm not discounting any specifics in the Bible or anything, the 10 commandments or anything like that. I'm not saying like don't listen to those things or those things aren't true, but I'm saying that we lose sight of what God really wants us to do. And at the root of the Christian faith is love God above all else and treat others the way you want to be treated. Love them as you want to be loved. And if you're doing those things, then you're probably doing pretty well on everything else too. And so that just trickles into every aspect of life, whether we're talking about caring for ourselves and loving ourselves and then serving others, trying to figure out our path in life, our will. Like, I so want to encourage people to, and I know maybe I hope someone is listening to this right now and thinking, man, I haven't prayed in forever. I've never prayed, or I don't really know anything about God, or Christianity's lame, or like Christians are judgmental. I don't want that. And I so hope that that person can just get a little bit of comfort and what we're talking about. And then if you just love others, like you love yourself and love God above all else, then a lot of other things are going to fall into place. And that's a lot of my simple living philosophy as well. I was brought up with kind of a simple explanation of what faith is and how it should be played out in your life. And part of that could have been due to, when kids are asking lots of questions, they get annoying. So your parents just give you like a quick answer just to shut you up, like treat others the way you want to be treated, then that's it, but it really has affected me in my life in so many ways. And I think if we can just focus on that and focus on the simple things and just treating others respectfully and taking care of ourselves, then that's where we're going to find joy in life. That's where we're going to find contentment. We just overcomplicate things so much. So if we just, again, make that space in our lives to just pray, even if you don't believe in God and you're like, I don't know, I don't believe in any of this. This is all hocus pocus. Just start to pray. Just do it. It doesn't have to sound pretty. Just try and see what happens in your life. And it could bring so many great things to your life. So I hope that I can encourage some people to kind of take some steps towards that.
I love the title of your book, Simply Filled, because as you've just outlined in this whole podcast, simple living is so much more abundant than we can ever realize. That we can find simple ways to find gratitude, that we can find simple ways to take care of ourselves through exercise and nutrition, simple ways of dealing with other women, just lifting them up supporting others. And then what you just said, the golden rule, it doesn't get more simple than that. But each of those is so profound, and we way overcomplicate things, as you
Mhm.
just mentioned. And in that overcomplication, that's when our heads just spin, and that's when our lives start to spiral. But when
Mhm.
we can get grounded, like you mentioned, then I think our lives are so much more enriched. So I want to encourage our listeners to go out there and to find you and to pick up a copy of your ebook. Can you tell us how we can connect with you, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is simplyfilledonline.com. And then you can check me out on Instagram and Facebook. Both are just at Simply Filled.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to get your ebook, would they just go to your website?
Yeah, I've got it for sale on my website. So you just go to simplyfilledonline.com. And then I think in the upper left hand corner, if you hover over the little icon there, there will be a link that says books, and you click on that, and then it'll just lead you to how you can purchase it.
Okay, great. Kim, thank you so much for being on the show. We really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
having you
you
here.
so much for having me, Kim. I appreciate it.
That's it for today. For more from Kim, you can go to kimmaravich.com. For more from Lori, go to simplyempoweredllc.com. We're always open to listener questions or suggestions for the show. You can email those to contact@awholenewyouPodcast.com. We'd also love it if you joined our Facebook community and followed us on Instagram. Just search for A Whole New You Podcast. And lastly, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review in iTunes, we would really appreciate that so more people can find our show and join our community. We'll see you next week.